get emails from them saying, you must read this paper, it's terrific. And if that's from somebody I respect, then I'll go and read it. And so you could sort of have a network of not formal refereeing, but of informal recommendation. And anybody can read. I mean, if Lawrence has a blog and I can read that he recommends this paper, I would do it.
Well, we have an imperfect system in physics where not everybody can post to the physics archive. I forget what the requirements are, but you have to reach a certain threshold before you're allowed to freely post articles. Now, that's not always a good thing. I've gotten many phone calls from people, will you please be my sponsor so I can post this paper? And it maybe is I don't have time to read. I get too many, but on the one hand, you don't want to cut out the people because they don't reach the threshold. On the other hand, it does do what you're saying. It's not quite refereeing, but people have a certain level of experience and already a track record.
The other thing, sorry, go ahead. The other thing is that publishing on paper has become so easy now. That I get Vanity Press books essentially every day.
All of us do.
And I sort of look and see I don't recognise that publisher's name. And then you realise that it's from the same small town as the author. But
I also want to but I want to jump in. I don't know what it's like in biology, but I think we already operate under your principle. I bet Brian and I do not look at every paper that's on the archive every day, or even the abstracts of every paper. We tend to end up looking at those that are the good papers word of mouth tends to filter, and our students tell us, or whatever. And there's just so much that we already rely on that filtering process before we choose stuff.
That's absolutely right.
I mean, we have models from elsewhere in cyberspace. I mean, imagine if the way that a search engine works is every time you have a website, 2 people get picked to peer review the website, and then what comes on top on your internet search would be the one that's refereed by 2 people, as opposed to, say, Google page rankings, which is entirely implicit, based on hundreds of thousands of choices of who links to whom, which is a kind of collective vote as to which websites
Have you talked
matter.
That's a great idea. You could become a billionaire, I think.
I mean, and in a sense, I think we don't know what the best model is going to be for scientific review. There's got to be some sort of quality control. Whether the current system of 2 to 3 referees picked by a human being and having veto power over paper is the best system, I tend to doubt.
But don't you think that's what's good about science? It doesn't depend on the human peer reviewing. What eventually succeeds is what works.
Yes.
People pick up that's what's good about science. What works survives. The garbage doesn't anyway, and people pick up on it because it works and allows them to go further. And so it's just the scientific process that moves beyond that sort of human frailty.
It's a self-healing process, which is why single fraudulent reports don't corrupt the entire enterprise.
For a while they can.
For a little while they can, but the enterprise works around them.
But are there any good examples of an absolutely excellent paper that was suppressed in the modern era, and it took a while before it bubbled up?
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Yeah, there's the ones about, there's a whole bunch. I think
physics I'm referring to.
In physics.
Well, in biochemistry, my friend
But
John
those
Krebs
in other words, the nice thing about physics is you can sit down with a piece of paper and generally calculate. Again, if it's an experimental result, it's harder. But a theoretical, are there any wonderful
ones I think
theoretical
it's more being ignored rather than suppressed.
Right.
I mean, people didn't realize the importance. But
right.
I don't know. But I think Richard's right. There are suppressions, and but one of the reasons maybe because of, I tend to think maybe because of money, that biochemical things. I mean, there's a lot more money in medicine and pharmaceuticals that unfortunately adds a whole different set of pressures that we don't really have in physics at this point.
There was a list was going around. This is a slightly cheesy question. You'll forgive me in advance, but there was a question on the Freakonomics column of the New York Times recently that said, you get these top 10 lists of who's the best, who named the top 10 people and we never get a who are the top 10 scientists list, right? It's okay. So in fact, if you go and take a look at it, it's mostly the people at this table, as it happens, but asking you the same sort of thing over the past 350 years, not who was don't give me the list of Newton and Darwin. Can you think of some unsung heroes that people really should go and figure out what they were doing and?
Well, I think that's the wrong question.
All right, okay.
People are too fixated on people. And I mean, it's great. I mean, it's nice to have scientific role models, and I think it's good for kids to have scientific role models. But the people I mean, you know, there may have been amazing people,
Well,
and as historical context, it's wonderful, but they're irrelevant to the science.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, the practice of science and science as a method is one thing, and I agree with you about that, but I find that practically, if you tell people Bill Hamilton's life story and what he discovered, but put it in the context of who Bill Hamilton was, it somehow comes alive in a different kind of way.
To get people interested, it's true. But
Richard, do you see what I'm getting at there?
Yeah, kind of.
There's a whole realm of journalism I call People Magazine sort of science reporting, which is
That's not what I'm talking about.
Everyone, you know, and I agree with you. We need to humanize the endeavor. People have to realize that scientists are human, and that's why you know, there's a lot of efforts, in fact, and I think both Brian and I are in this, and maybe a bunch of the others here, trying to get scientific themes in Hollywood, and so scientists on. You know, it's more integrated into the culture, so people realize that scientists are people and the scientific endeavor is culturally interesting, etc. I agree with you completely there to humanize it, and so that's important.
And that's difficult in itself. You know, you have a series like Lie to Me on Fox TV now, which is based on the Paul Ekman's work, of course, the facial expressions and so on and so forth. So it's hard to convey some of the science in those sorts of things. But I still liked my question.
According to one poll, the people were asked to name famous scientist, and the one who came out on top was Bill Gates, and the second one was Al Gore. So we have some work to do.
Some work to do. Last question then. Over that period of the operation of this enterprise, the Merchants of Light. Going forward, what's the most exciting thing in each of your fields that you are looking forward to?
Well, I'll just...
That's another People magazine question.
Yes, well, anyway, I mean, for the simple answer, when someone asks me what's the next great thing, I always say if I knew, I'd be doing it. But I mean, I think there are...
And Einstein said if it wasn't called research...
Well, I don't want to usurp... I bet Brian and I agree on almost... And that's what's great. And you can add to this. But there, in cosmology, it's it's this nature of this weird energy that dominates empty space. In particle physics, I think it's the domain that Brian has written about a lot, which is the way to try and unify the forces of nature and understand quantum mechanics and gravity. And those are the frontiers. But, you know, where the next great discovery will be, you know, maybe somewhere else. I don't know if they're...
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is, in my wildest dreams, what I'd hope to happen before I leave this Earth or universe is maybe we'll understand what are the basic constituents of space and time. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that space and time are derivative, emergent ideas, but we don't really know what the fundamental constituents of them would be. And we've got hints of it, and maybe that's something we'll make progress on.
I think for my field, the sciences of mind, the most exciting development is the melting of boundaries between psychology and other sciences, and other fields of endeavor, in fact. The birth of neuroeconomics, of behavioral economics, of evolutionary psychology, of the psychology of aesthetics, of moral psychology applied to jurisprudence and moral philosophy. The elimination of these 19th century disciplinary boundaries that I think stood in the way of a coherent understanding.
I know I'm going to jump in. That's another advertisement. That was the thing we were trying to achieve with this meeting, and that's the thing we're going to continue to try and achieve. But I should also say as well that Brian and I, our bias, we're talking about particle physics, is probably a related aspect of that, that is probably also extremely exciting, which is the disappearance of the boundaries between physics and biology, which I think will be another huge threshold area.
Well, I think I would have to say understanding consciousness, which is more Steve's field than mine. So I won't say that because it's not my field. I think I would say perhaps a complete computer simulation of an origin of artificial life and subsequent evolution in an artificial world with its own physics and its own ecology, its own ecosystem, a second life that actually evolves rather than being designed by humans.
Well, the most exciting thing in my field is science, because I'm not a scientist. I'm a philosopher and a spectator and an amateur of science, and it is thrilling. I mean, beyond description, really, to see what's happening. I mean, across all these fields, cosmology and in fundamental particle physics, in biology and biomedical sciences, the progress that's being made now is really extraordinary. And because I have an interest in philosophy and philosophy of mind as well, what's happening in neuroscience and its effect on understanding psychology and on consciousness. But what all this does, in a way, is to show that Lawrence's point is absolutely right, that the sciences are bleeding into one another, that the boundaries are coming down, that what's in effect happening is that we're having a sort of a new second wind of the Enlightenment. I talked earlier about the way that ideas and methods in the natural sciences have been applied more broadly, social sciences and humanities in the Enlightenment, to alter our conceptions of society and human nature and human flourishing. And with this breach in the walls of the different disciplines, because there's been too much over-specialism. We all know that since the 19th century, since the German attitude to how you conduct research really became the dominant paradigm. And now that all these walls are being breached, and we are seeing tremendous amount of cross-fertilization, and as a result, huge new insights. So, to be a spectator of this process is to be enthralled by it.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Richard, A.C. Grayling, Lawrence, Steve Pinker, Brian Greene. I'll see you back here in 2360.
I hope so.
For the 700th anniversary of the Society.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks a lot.